One of the biggest 40k tournaments since the pandemic started has happened, and once the dust settled, Mr. John Lennon emerged victorious, running his Sisters of Battle. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about the Sisters Army list that's topped one of the biggest tournaments in the world post-lockdown. It's an event run by Frontline Gaming, the people who do the LVO and the ITC, and it was a truly massive 40k event. I believe slightly more than 160 players took part. Really big events like this are a good chance to see which armies are doing best right now, and the finals in particular didn't have all that much of a heavy feature of AdMech, which is kind of nice seeing how dominant they've been lately. The list was run by John Lennon from The Art of War. I've no doubt that they'll cover it at some point on their own channel, which I'll leave a link to down in the video description if you're interested. I'll just be taking a look over the list, but I'm sure I'll miss out on quite a lot of the subtleties and intricacies of actually playing it, so keep an eye out if they do post an update sometime soon. You very much both need a great list and to be a great player to win these kind of events. I've already talked about one of John's lists on the channel already this year. He managed to have success with Deathwatch, which I believe is the first time that Deathwatch have won a GT in 9th, and he narrowly beat Sean Naden in the final, another excellent 40k player running some mixed Aldari. In any case, let's take a look over his list and talk about a few of the more obvious combos. So here we have the list in question. It's composed of perhaps the two strongest Sisters of Battle orders in my opinion, the Bloody Rose and the Ebon Chalice. There's a Bloody Rose Patrol, they're the ones that give you +1 attack and +1 AP, and an Ebon Chalice Outrider. They're the ones where you get a second Sacred Rite for the Ebon Chalice units, and when you do an Act of Faith for them, you can choose to discard one more Miracle Dice and make the previous one a 6. They also have a good Warlord trait and stratagem, which we'll get onto. As well as those, I thought the list was quite interesting for including a Battle Sanctum, basically a fairly decent sized line of sight blocking terrain piece. It costs 80 points, and the main purpose of it is to generate more Miracle Dice. If you have a Sisters unit camped up within it, then they can generate 1 Miracle Dice each turn by doing an action called Prayers to the Saint. For general games of 40k, I'm not really the biggest fan of them. As fortifications, they're generally not allowed to set up anywhere within 3 inches of other terrain pieces, which could make it really restrictive where you can place them. I believe the tournament had a rule where you could substitute fortifications for a terrain piece in your own deployment zone though, which does allow it to be put down in a useful location reliably. I think it's a pretty cool solution to making fortifications a bit more usable, as it means that you can actually reliably include one in your list without having to worry about the exact layout of the terrain and whether or not you'll actually be able to set it up. In any case, it would work pretty nicely with the Miracle Dice, feeding the Ebon Chalice the ones that they need to get all of their 6s. The Bloody Rose Patrol is led by Morven Vile herself, a ridiculously potent fighty character, gives 1 unit 4 re-rolls to hit and wound each turn, and she's the Warlord with her Warlord trait to allow herself to hit and wound when she's in melee. I've already discussed her full rules on the channel, so feel free to give that a search if you'd like to see it. I think that she is crazy strong, and it's quite rare to find a Sisters list that wouldn't benefit from her, and the nice combination of extreme melee power and a great buffing that she brings. To make the patrol work and provide a little obsec, there's 5 Battle Sisters, good for home field objectives, and perhaps even generating that Miracle Dice each turn. There's 2 units of Repentia and a Repentia Superior. They don't need too much explanation to be honest, ridiculously destructive Sisters melee units, perhaps for raw damage output in combination with the Bloody Rose stratagem Tear Them Down for auto wounds on 6s, they might well be some of the most destructive melee threats in the game. The Repentia Superior can give them a +1 to wound as well, doubling down on the crazy damage output, and I believe as there's no rhinos for them, that they'd typically be starting the game in strategic reserve, then pretty much guaranteeing some long charges with Miracle Dice. It's a pretty disturbing threat to have them emerge from the side of the board, then guarantee a charge 100%. There are then 2 units of Zephyrim, units that I definitely underestimated when I first saw the stat line in the Codex. The Jump Pack Sisters with a flurry of damage 1 Power Sword attacks, really quite a nice threat range, which is made better with their pennants to allow them to re-roll charges. As it goes, they're really quite easy units to buff up to the 9s with stratagems. They can get a +1 to wound with their Embodied Prophecy, Tear Them Down from the Bloody Rose, and they make incredibly good use of Val's rerolls. With built-in Deep Strike as well, they'd have the option for starting off the board if they needed to, and again should be very likely to get into the enemy between the Pennant and Miracle Dice. The high AP also works quite well with dealing with Skitarii blobs, who with all their buffs to saves and ignoring AP -1 and 2, can be a real pain to deal with quite a lot of anti-infantry options. The Ebon Chalice side is led by St. Celestine and a Dogmata. Celestine and her Gemini are a really interesting unit in the new codex, far harder to kill than they really should be, the ardent blade dealing out a fair amount of mortal wounds, and odds are getting up when they die. They combine really quite well with the Sacrosands, of which there's really quite a big unit, all armed with halbards and one takes the spear, as because Celestine and the Gemini are characters, it means provided any one of the unit is within 3 inches of the Sacrosant blob, then you're not actually allowed to target them with shooting. That could be really quite powerful indeed if you're needing to stretch to an objective, or just increase their threat range by a good few inches. The Sacrosanct, Celestine and Val could also be a really interesting option for the new While We Fight We Stand secondary, the one where you select 3 units, and if they survive till the end of the game, you get 5 victory points for each. Certainly Celestine and Val with their character protection and massive defense might not be the hardest to keep safe, and the Sacrosancts are really quite hardy as well. Next up we come to that Dog Martyr, who's taken the Enduring Faith and Holy Piety war hymns. That's the +1 to Shield of Faith, and the bonus Sacred Rite one, which could mean that you could have 3 Sacred Rites active for the Ebon Chalice units if you wanted. And she can also make a unit obsec, such as those Sacrosancts, and allow a unit to shoot while doing an action as well, which could be handy for picking up Retrieve Octarius data or other secondaries. Next we come to 2 loaded up Rhinos, each one with 5 Dominions and 5 Retributors in. The Dominions are all packing the Artificer Stormbolters, they're the ones that are damaged 2, and can spit out a fairly horrendous amount of mortal wounds, really quite likely to get a full 6 if you are using some rerolls like Val. The Dominions also allow you to scout the Rhinos forward 6 inches, and potentially get both them and the Retributors into strike range nice and early, and I think the Retributors are really quite an interesting unit setup. Rather than just spamming multi-melters or anything, we've got 2 multi-melters, 2 Armorium Cherubs, and 2 Heavy Flamers in each, which combined with the Sister Superior's bolt gun, could allow you to use the Holy Trinity for an extra +1 to wounds, and I quite like the way that you could use the 2 Armorium Cherubs either on the multi-melters if you want to hit armor, or on the Heavy Flamers if you want to burn away a whole bunch of troops. I really like the flexibility of those units, and it's fun to see someone doing a bit more intelligent than just spamming a whole bunch of the same weapon. Those multi-melters could certainly profit from those automatic 6 damage dice that Ebon Chalice can generate, and the Heavy Flamers can use their stratagem, the one that gets them up to 3 mortal wounds, provided you roll a 4+ on the wound roll. Those 2 little Rhinos just carry a ludicrous amount of incredibly dangerous sisters. Finally, to round up, we have 2 units of 5 Seraphim. They're the fairly standard build with the quad hand flamers, and they're really nice with their Deadly Descent stratagem, which allows them to fire all their pistols twice. On average, they land something like 36 strength 4 hits on the enemy unit that they shoot at. So for the 90 odd points that they cost, they're really quite an efficient chaff deletion unit. Again, if they wanted to bite just that little bit harder, again they could use their Ebon Chalice stratagem, which they're quite likely to max the mortal wounds on. Overall, it's just a ferociously dangerous army list, and a really cool example of what the new sisters can do. A massive amount of pop-up and highly mobile threats that can certainly delete things that are above their own points cost. Tons of small units for doing things like raising banners and retrieving Octarius data, and the option to go for To the Last, the new version of While We Fight We Stand as well. Really good to see, and a massive congrats on winning another grand tournament. I feel like I've learned a lot just looking over the list alone. So let me know what you think down in the comments, particularly if there's anything that I've not got about the list, or cool combos that were used in game, and I'll leave a link to the Art of War YouTube channel down in the video description. Totally recommend checking them out. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I do like to cover the strongest army lists about from time to time, and I tend to post new 40k videos every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying these videos regularly, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description. It is the thing that allows me to keep on making these videos quite so regularly, so if you are enjoying a lot, any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, being able to see certain videos early each week, regular votes to see what sort of things come next for the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.